Give me a second to get this thing hooked up. Can you hear me? All right. Tonight we're going to talk about the lust of the eyes. In 1 John 2:16, it says, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world." So tonight we're going to talk about this subject, the lust of the eyes, because it is rampant in the world that we live in today, and we need to understand it. We need to know how to stay away from it. We need to know how to recognize it when it happens, and so that we not get caught up in that. So I want us to spend some time tonight looking at this. There in 1 John 2:16, it basically, I think, tells us that there's three categories of sin in the world, and it can be divided into these three things: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And I think I'm going to bring future lessons on these other two, but I wanted to start tonight with the lust of the eyes because I think that's where it starts. It starts with that, and then it goes on to the others. It's good for us to understand what we're talking about. So when we talk about what does this mean, the lust of the eyes, I got this off of BibleHub.com. A longing or covetous desire sparked by what one sees and craves. I thought that was a pretty good definition. They also said that this craving often goes beyond a healthy admiration or appreciation for beauty and turns into a ungodly fixation. So that's what we're talking about tonight, not just looking at something or someone, and that's not the problem. It's the fixation. Also, the word lust in Greek, it is epithemia. It carries the sense of a strong, insistent yearning. When paired with the eyes, the phrase implies the enticement that visual stimuli can have, leading to sin. So it's more than just looking at something or someone. And this says it's not merely the sight itself, but the feelings and the actions that are sinful. And so when a person who has the lust of the eyes looks at something and it's a fixation, there is some feeling and action that comes from that. That is the lust. So it's important for us to understand that lust can take us off the path that God desires for us. When we want something that is not ours and that is not meant for us, we step away from God's beautiful plan for our lives. And that's what we've got to always understand, that God has a plan for each and every one of us. And as long as we stay within God's will, He will fulfill that plan if we let Him. But if we fill our lives with lust, then we are stepping off the path that God wants us to be on. So I want us to look at some Bible examples, and I came up with 3 examples that I think are pretty good to just show you from the Bible. And the first example is Eve. In Genesis 3:6, it says, "So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. She took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So I underlined the phrase pleasant to the eyes because I think that's where the lust of the eyes comes in this story. Man was commanded not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So when Eve looked at the forbidden fruit of the tree and had a strong desire for it because she was being tempted by Satan, remember? It's just not something that she came up with on her own. She was being tempted. But when she developed a strong desire for it, that was the lust of the eyes. And that desire, that strong desire, caused her to reach and grab the fruit and eat it and then give it also to her husband. Then, of course, there's the example of King David and Bathsheba. In 2 Samuel 11:2, it says, Then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. Now, she was probably nude because she was bathing. Now, David could have turned his head. That would have been the appropriate thing to do, and walk back into his room, into his house, and not think about or dwell on that anymore. But we know that that's not what he did. And so David's ungodly fixation on this woman led to adultery and many other sins that David became involved in before he finally repented after Nathan the prophet came to him. So this ungodly fixation that he had was lust. It was the lust of the eyes. Achan in Joshua chapter 7, beginning at verse 20, it says, And Achan answered Joshua and said, Indeed, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and this is what I have done. When I saw among the spoils a beautiful Babylonian garment, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. So you see, Israel was commanded not to take any of the accursed things from Jericho when they were ordered to attack it and to destroy the city. They were not supposed to take any of those things, but Achan did take some. And we see why he took them. He looked at those items and he coveted them. And this is material covetousness, and it is the lust of the eyes. And today we would call this materialism. It is very rampant in our society today, materialism. And we have to be careful about that as well. That sin led to a lot of trouble for Israel. If you remember, they went and attacked Ai and they were defeated. And many men of Israel were killed because of that. And so they inquired of the Lord to find out why they had lost that battle. And then they eventually narrowed it down to that it was Achan and his sin. So it caused a lot of trouble for Israel. Now let's see what the scriptures say about the lust of the eyes. Well, it was addressed in the Ten Commandments. If we look at Exodus 20 and 17, this is the last of the Ten Commandments. It says, You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. So if a person looks out and sees something that the neighbor has with the eyes, and he starts wanting that, that is the lust of the flesh. The lust of the eyes. That is the lust of the eyes, what we're talking about tonight. And Jesus also addressed the lust of the eyes regarding sexual morality. In Matthew 5:28, Jesus said, But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And that's very similar to Proverbs 6:25 in the Old Testament, when they're being warned about a seductive woman. Do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her allure you with her eyelids. And so the heart is very important here. Not only do we have to control our eyes, but we have to control our heart as well. In 1 Corinthians 10:6, it says, now these things became our examples. And of course, Paul is talking about the things that Israel did and the things recorded in the Old Testament about all of their wanderings and the things that they did, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. They lusted after evil things. Do you remember when they were wandering, or when they, after they had come out of Egypt, they wanted to go back because they wanted the melons and the leeks and the onions and all the things that were in Israel, and they hated the manna that God gave them. They counted it as worthless, even though it fed them and gave them all the nutrients that they wanted. They wanted to go back to Egypt so they could eat something other than that. They even lusted for meat, and God sent them quail, and many of them were very because of their lust. God destroyed a lot of them. He sent a plague on them while the meat was still between their teeth. That was because of their lust. Luke chapter 12, verse 15 says, and he said to them, take heed and beware of covetousness. This is Jesus speaking. For one's life does not consist of the abundance of the things he possesses. So here Jesus is warning us about material covetousness and about of course, the eyes that see those things make it a sin of the lust of the eyes. 2 Peter 1:4 says, by which have been given to us exceeding great and precious promises. I think it's talking there about all the things that God has done to us and given us the word of God to guide us. And through that, we know that we have been given these exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. Corruption. We know what happens with corruption. It ends up in hell eventually. Corruption through lust. That is how we are corrupted, is through lust. And so Peter is warning us about that and telling us that things fall in two categories. We can either be with the world and in lust, or we can be divine partakers with God. Two categories. That's it. You're either in one or the other. So I think from these verses, we can deduce that the lust of the eyes is sinful. And it's something that Christians should abstain from. Well, now that we know about what it is and what the scriptures say and some Bible examples, let's look at some worldly examples. Because we need to be able to spot these things in the world and stay away from them. We need to understand what it is. Only when we can understand what sin is, at that point, then we can avoid it. Okay? So the first thing that came to my mind was pornography. Pornography is sinful. It is the lust of the eyes. Because anyone partaking in that is feeding their lust. That's what they're doing. They're feeding their lust with those visual images. And so there are other reasons why it's wrong. I mean, even with Jesus saying, if you look upon a woman to lust after her, you've committed adultery in your heart already. And there's no way anyone can look at that filth and not lust and not commit adultery like Jesus said. Okay, viewing magazines, TV shows, or movies with partially clothed or nude women or men. You know, it's getting more and more, these days, more and more they'll show more or show less. They show more of less. Let's put it that way. People wearing less and less. They even have that Survivor thing. I didn't watch any of it. I think it's been like I've seen it a couple of times just when I was flicking channels or something. But they have one where they're nude. Of course, it's blurred out. You can't see it, but you know that they're nude. The things that people are going to these days, and this is worldliness. And watching those things will produce lust. So we have to be aware of these things. So I put a few more examples here. Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. You've heard about that. It's a book full of almost naked women, what I understand. And, it's not something a Christian should be looking at. In fact, I've heard that back in the 50s or whenever Playboy started, most of the women that were in those magazines were dressed about like these women are. And that was considered pornography back in the day. Imagine that. In the 50s, it was considered pornography to be dressed like that. And now we have Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. Nobody thinks about that as being pornography. God hadn't changed about the way he thinks about that. People have, though. People have. Dancing with the Stars, a TV show. And I don't watch it, but I have come across it a couple of times. And it's women and men, and women in less clothing than they need, dancing around on the floor and shaking what they got. And I don't know how you can't watch that and not have lust in your heart. I just don't know how you can do that. And now I understand that it's a contest and there's some gamesmanship and stuff about the contest going on. But it's things that we as Christians don't need to be looking at. R-rated movies. Okay? I put movies in this list because R-rated is given to movies that have really bad language in it. And usually there has to be a nudity component, some type of nudity somewhere in the movie in order to get the R-rated. Christians should not be watching R-rated movies. It's just not good for you. It will take you down the wrong road, and it's lust. Watching stars immodestly dressed. I like to watch country music presentations and things, but you have to be careful even with that because some come out not dressed too well. And there's one popular lady today who used to be country. She changed over to more progressive music, and all the young kids are crazy about her, especially the girls. I'm not going to name who it is, but I saw a clip on the TV where she came out to perform, and she was in like a bathing suit. Now, that's probably not what she calls it, but that's what it looked like. And I just cannot believe with all that talent you have to do that. I just don't understand. But those are the kinds of things we are faced with today from the world. They don't think about it, but we have to. We have to recognize it. We have to stay away from it. We have to be careful at the beach, the lake, the water park, even college campuses. Hey, I went to college. I know what's there. And when it started getting warm, the girls started putting on less clothes. and the guys liked it. That's lust. So we have to be careful about those things. Advertisements are full of lustful things because they help sell their product. Even billboards with women in bathing suits. I mean, there's no place where they won't put it. Magazines, TV. But we are just bombarded by these things. We have to be careful on the internet because you know what? You're only one click away from seeing something you don't need to see. You're one click away from seeing somebody half dressed, or even it doesn't take long to, I mean, a click or two and you're in pornography before you know it. It's that easy. And we have to guard our children and make sure they don't see that film. We have to make sure that there's safeguards on the devices to make sure they don't get that. And safeguards for us too. Okay, desire for wealth and fame as seen on TV. You know, they used to have a show called The Rich and the Famous or something where they showed these famous people and these rich people and how they lived and their yachts and their $1 million houses and all of this. And, you know, those kinds of shows can cause you to lust after material things that you really don't need. The desire for every new gadget that comes out, or to have what others have without regard to affordability, sensibility, or priorities. I know that's a mouthful. It took me a while to come up with that. Okay? There's nothing wrong with buying a new car. There's nothing wrong with buying a new house or building a house. We built one. I've had one new car. Probably won't have any more. There's nothing wrong with getting a new iPhone. But if you're getting a new iPhone every year or every 2 years, however often they come out, I don't even know how often they come out. That's probably not sensible. You know, there's probably better things you could do. You could help somebody who's poor, help someone who's in need instead of wasting that money. Because you still have a good phone. I know mine usually get very, very old before I replace them. So I know they stay good for a long time. Affordability, you know, sometimes people just buy things and they put it on the credit card. They don't think about if they can afford it or not. And then they have this huge credit card bill. Tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even 100,000. And then you have these commercials on radio and TV that talk about, oh well, if you got credit card debt, you can take out a mortgage, and you can get the money out of your house and pay it off. That's awful. That's awful advice. Do like Dave Ramsey says, cut the credit card up, throw it away. That's the best thing to do. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. It's certainly not worth, you know, being caught up in materialism, buying new things when you can't afford it, and not having enough to put food on the table for your family. That's awful. That would be an awful position to be in. Priorities. Ron talked about priorities a little bit this morning. And you know, anything that takes us away from God, and materialism will do that. It takes us away from God. It's not good for us to be involved in. And we see those things with our eyes. We're bombarded with those commercials. Lots and lots of commercials. They almost say, be covetous. Buy this. Go on this trip. Do this thing. It'll make you happy. It'll give you fulfillment. You know, our focus should not be on keeping up with the Joneses or possessing anything that glitters. Because these things cannot give us fulfillment and happiness. They cannot. They're just things. It's materialism that cannot make you happy. Well, I came across as I was researching this, I came across the term eye candy. The world has a lot of eye candy, and it's glittering and it's sparkling. And with the commercials saying, buy me and do this and spend your money on this and be covetous. They don't say be covetous because that's from Satan. He's not going to tell you it's covetous. He's going to make it look real good. But that's the rabbit hole you go down. Instead, our focus should be on Christ and on heaven. That's what it should be on. Okay, so we've looked at all these worldly examples, and I'm sure there's a lot more. We could talk about stealing. You know, the lust of the eyes is what leads to stealing, because somebody sees something and they want it, and they're going to get it whether they have to steal it or shoot you or whatever they have to do. That's what this sin can lead to. So we could talk about many other examples, but time restricts us, and so I think that's probably sufficient for now. I think you understand what I'm talking about. So how do we overcome this sin? Well, I have 5 things that I'm going to mention to you. 5 things that I think will help overcome this sin. The first is renewing the mind. If you're going to overcome a sin, you have to renew your mind. Romans 12:2 tells us, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Be transformed. So there's a renewing of your mind that has to happen. You know, first of all, you have to recommit yourself. And this is kind of like repenting, because it requires you to change your mind how you think about something. You have to say, this is sin and I'm not going to do it anymore. That's renewing your mind. And oh, by the way, I'm renewing your mind tonight too, just by presenting this to you and reminding you what this sin is. I'm renewing your mind. I'm helping you along the way so that you can stay away from the sin. Number 2, having a support group. And man, do we have a support group? The congregation. We do have a support group, a good one. And individual Christians as well. Because sometimes you can find somebody who's struggling with the same sin that you are, or has struggled in the past and has overcome it. And that's a wonderful thing, to find somebody like that and get that support and find out how they did it and them help you with that. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. So hanging around with other Christians, being influenced by them, is like iron sharpening iron. Isn't that wonderful? That's what we're supposed to do when we meet here. We're supposed to encourage and support one another and lift each other up. Okay, number 3, discipline of the eyes. This is very important. We need to make a commitment like Job. And doing that can help limit our exposure to tempting images, whether that be at a place we go, or whether that be on the internet, or whether that be materialistic type stuff, whatever. This will help us. In Job 31:1, Job said, I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? Eye discipline. We've got to control our eyes. We got to control our heart too. I already mentioned that one time. We got to exercise some control, some self-control. The scriptures tells us that we have to exercise self-control. Even though this applies more to the sexual side of this sin, I think that it also applies to materialism too. You got to control your eyes because all of these commercials are coming at you. And they're encouraging you to be covetous. They're encouraging you to lust after the things that they have. But don't do it. Control your eyes. Be disciplined. Prayer and dependence on God. You know, we need God's help. We can't do this all by ourselves. Even if we have support from our support group, we still need God's help too. Jesus said in Luke 22:40, toward the end of that verse, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and came back and found his disciples asleep, he said, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." Pray that you may not enter into temptation. If we pray to God to help us so that we don't get tempted, so that we don't sin, God will help us. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, toward the end of that verse, when Paul's talking about temptations and that every man has been tempted, he says, but with the temptation, God, and of course I put God there and put it in parentheses because that's who it's talking about, God will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. So God gives us an escape for every temptation. We just have to find it. It's always there. It may take a little more work sometimes than others, but it's there. We need to find it and we need to use it. We need to use the escape that God gives us. And number 5, setting healthy boundaries. Well, you know, as far as the internet and your iPhones, you can set filters, time limits, accountability software for all your digital devices. That's one way to set boundaries. Don't go to places or events that would easily cause lust of the eyes. You know, if going to the beach or the water park does you in, don't go. Don't go. That's the easiest thing you can do. Don't go and don't go to places that's going to put you where you will be tempted and are likely to sin. As Christians, we have to stay out of those places, whether it be that sin or any other sin, and stay away from people who engage in those things. Usually I can look around the office and it's pretty easy to tell the ones who are engaged in that kind of thing. It's real easy to tell. So I don't get buddy-buddy with those people because I don't want to be dragged into that. Set a budget and live within your means to keep yourself from material covetousness. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with buying a new car. There's nothing wrong with buying a new house, a new iPhone, a new anything. If it's something that you and your family have decided is something that you would like to have, and you have the means, and it doesn't detract you from God's service, and it doesn't make you lose your focus on spiritual things, there's nothing wrong with that. But if it causes any of those problems, there's a lot wrong with it. So as I conclude, I think we have seen enough scripture and enough examples here to know that the lust of the eyes is sinful, and it also leads to other sins, as we have seen. just like David. With David, it led to other sins. Achan, he ended up taking something that he shouldn't because of his lust. He coveted it, and then he took it. He shouldn't have. We must exercise control over our eyes and over our hearts. We have to do it. Self-control is very important. We must focus on spiritual versus sensual or material. We as Christians, we have to stay focused on the spiritual. Because one day we're going to be spiritual. We're going to be spirits. We're going to be in some kind of new body. I don't know what it's going to be, but it won't be physical. It won't be here like here on this earth. And so we have to focus on those things because that's where we're wanting to go. Not the sensual. Sensual, we usually think about sexual, and surely that is, but sensual also involves using your senses, and particularly tonight, your eyes. The eyes can cause you to sin. And whether it be materialism, material covetousness, we need to focus on spiritual instead of those things. So I offer the invitation to you. I hope this lesson has been profitable for you. I hope it's reminded you of some things, and hopefully it will help you in some way. And so we offer the invitation. And if there's anything that we can do for you tonight, if we can pray for you, if you have any need, come while we stand and sing.